Hey guys, it's Cameron. Welcome back to Life of a Dev. In previous videos, I showed you guys how to use the useState and useEffect hook, and today we're actually going to be using them to build an application. So we're going to be building a funny dad joke app that hits an API, gets dad joke, displays it on our screen. We're also going to have a button that says not funny. If it's not funny, you can get a new joke. So let's go ahead and get right into that tutorial, guys.
I can't get you out of my mind. It's like I feel it for the first time. Been thinking about you all night. I've been searching for this all my life. You're just my type.
Alrighty guys, so we're over here on the computer now in VS Code. The first thing we want to do is open up a folder. We're going to create a new folder, and we're just going to call it Dad Joke App. We'll go ahead and open that folder up, and we will open a new terminal here, and we will run create-react-app, and we'll run it in the current directory, and that will create us a simple React app template that we can use for this tutorial. So I'll go ahead and fast forward this so you guys don't have to sit through, and I'll see you guys when it's done. Alrighty guys, so let's go ahead and finish up here. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and eliminate some of the stuff that I don't need. I've already shown you guys how I clean this up, but we're just going to go ahead and enter HTML or index.html. We'll change the description just to dad or punny dad joke app, because we got to be punny. Punny dad joke app. We will also change the title of this app to Punny Dad Joke App, and we'll be done with, or we'll hop into the manifest file. The short name will be Dad Joke App. Dad Joke. I want all capitals. Joke App. And then the long name, we'll just do Punny Dad Joke App. Punny Dad Joke App. And then we can close the public folder. We can delete app.test.js. We can delete index.css. And we can delete logo.svg. We can close these two files here. We can open up index.js, we can delete that line, and then we can also, we'll save that there. We can open app.js here, and we can delete logo.svg, and we can totally remove this function because we're just going to be exporting an anonymous component, or anonymous arrow, or anonymous functional component, I guess is what it would be. So go ahead and save that. We want to return null just to start, and then we can npm run start just to make sure everything's working. So that's going to launch development server. It may take a second, but we should just get a blank white page. We're just making sure that it compiles properly without any errors. So after the changes we've just made to the boilerplate. So awesome, so it compiled and launched with no problems. As you see, we have our Punny Dad Joke App title, and we're just returning nothing. Okay, so we are going to need a few dependencies. We need node fetch, so that way we can use a fetch. We can use fetch to call an API or hit an API. And I'm also going to use Sass in this, so we're also going to need node Sass. So what we'll do is we'll do npm I for install, and we will do node-fetch to get node fetch. Okay, so that installed node fetch. We'll do npm I node Sass, so that way we can use Sass instead of CSS. Go ahead and give that a second, and while that's installing, I'm actually going to rename app.css into app.sass, and in our index file or our app file, we will also call it sass. That's going to compile with a fail because it can't load Node SAS here, but once it installs, we should be able to. It should compile just fine. So yeah, so it added it. Let's go ahead and save again, and as you see, oh, it's because app.sas is full of a bunch of CSS and not SAS. So, yay! Okay, we compiled perfectly. So we can go ahead and close out this terminal here, go back to our main terminal, and we can request our dependencies here. So we're going to need useState, which I've showed you how to use in a previous video, and we're also going to need, or useEffect, not useHug. So, and then we'll also need to import. We'll need to import fetch from node fetch. Alrighty, so now that we have that included, we can go ahead and start. The first thing we're going to do is within our functional component here, we're going to set up our local state, and how we'll do that is we'll go const array of app. So the first function will be app state, and the next one will be set app state, and that is equal to useState, which will just set a default state of an object with is loading. So is our app loading? By default, it's going to be set to true, and then we'll have another element which will just be our joke, and by default it will be set to an empty string. So that's our default local state setup. Next thing we're going to want to do is write some JSX here. So to get started, we will just have an empty div. If I could spell div. Duh. It's not working. Okay. Sorry, it wasn't working. Div will have an h2 element that will just say punny dad joke app, and then we will have an h1 element which will contain the joke, which we haven't grabbed yet or haven't even destructured yet, and we'll destructure that next. And then we'll have a button that asks if the joke's not funny. So we're going to need the actual joke to insert here, so let's go ahead and destructure is loading and the joke from our app state here. So we'll go const, we want joke, well I guess we want is loading first, and joke, I guess it really doesn't matter what order you have it in, and we're going to destructure that from our app state, and then we'll just put our joke into this h1 element, which right now is blank. So awesome. So now we have punny dad joke app with a blank h1, and then this not funny button, which absolutely does nothing. So what's next? I guess we need to actually fetch a dad joke, and to do that we're going to be using iCanHasDadJoke.com. They have a really awesome API here, so let's go ahead and open up their API documentation. And we're looking for fetch random dad joke. So they show it in a curl request, so basically this is not JavaScript, this is just a curl, which is command line, but it illustrates well enough. Once you understand what it's saying, you can really write this request in any language. So we're going to be sending a GET request to canIHasDadJoke.com, and we're going to attach a header, and it's going to be accepts application JSON. So let's go ahead and get a joke. So how we'll do that is we will create a function, const. Let's create an arrow function called getJoke, be equal to an arrow function. And within this arrow function, we're going to send a fetch request. So we're going to fetch that URL. By default, fetch is a GET request. And then we need to send our headers. So in here, we'll have our parameters. One of the parameters will be a header. And then the header will also be an object. And we can actually just grab this from here. We will need to format it a little bit for JavaScript, but that's fine. So we'll need to throw in just some quotations here. Awesome. So that is going to send a GET request to canihasdadjoke.com with the header of accept application JSON. So this fetches an asynchronous function, so we can append it with .then, and within that .then we're going to have our request that comes back, and we need to parse it through. It's going to be a JSON request, so we need to parse it as JSON. So request.json, and then we're also going to do another then statement. So after the JSON, or after a request has been parsed through JSON, we're going to have some actual JSON object or a JavaScript object, and we're just going to log that for now. So console.log JSON, and we also want to have a catch statement just in case there's an error. So we're going to catch any errors, and we want to console error out these errors. So this isn't going to fire off right away, so what we'll do is we're going to set the button click, so on click, the on click event for this button, if I can spell it, will fire off this get joke function. Get joke. Okay, so now if we go ahead and go back to our app here, and we open up our console, and we just pin it, don't know why it pinned funny, and we hit not funny, we should get, why are we not getting, oh, one moment here, I have some type of error, I don't think it's that, fetch, yeah, see it just didn't, get joke, console.log JSON, headers, accept, application JSON, fetch from node fetch, right? One sec, guys. Let me figure out what this problem is. I'm sure someone already sees it. Oh, okay. Weird. Maybe I didn't save it. But as you see, when we hit get joke, we are logging out a JSON element which contains a dad joke. It comes with the ID, the status of the request, 200 meaning successful, and the joke that is passed through. So what we'll do here is instead of console logging, what we'll do is we will set app state. We're going to set it to app state, so its current state, and we're going to reassign the joke value to json.joke. And if we go ahead and save that, that's going to go ahead and compile. It compiled without any problems, and we can open up our React Dev tools. As you see, we have our anonymous component, which contains a state, and there's no joke right now, but if we go ahead and click joke, we see that our jokes are populated. We populated our state with a joke. And as you see, we also have our joke here. So we don't want our app to load and there not to be a joke until someone clicks not funny. We want to fetch a joke as soon as our component mounts. As soon as this component, this dad joke mounts, we want to go ahead and get a joke. So what we'll do is we'll use the useEffect hook. We will go right here. We'll go useEffect. We will do an anonymous arrow function. And we only want it to run when the component mounts. So we'll do, you can basically stick whatever component you have in here. So if we had a named component, you can stick the name of the component, and then every time that component changes or re-renders, this will fire off again. But since we only want it to execute once, we can just leave it empty, and basically that will just execute the one time the component mounts. Sorry. So inside here, we're going to get dad joke. We'll just do get dad joke, or I guess it's not dad joke, it's just get joke. Get joke. And we also want to set our state. So let's set our state first. So what we'll do is, since this is going to render right off the bat, or it's going to run right off the bat, we want to set is loading to false. So set app state. We're going to do ... app state, so that way we don't change anything you don't want to change. Is loading, and we'll set that to false. So basically we set our state to false so that that way we know it's not loading, and then we run line 9 is not defined. What? Use callback. Why did it do that? That makes no sense. Why did Prettier do that? Weird. Okay, I don't quite know why that's doing that. So what we'll do is we'll just... Oh, and it populated it here too. I don't want you to do that for me. I want to do this myself. Okay, so that works, right? I'm so confused. Unexpected token. Yeah, because that's not supposed to be there right there. Must be... I'm so confused. One sec, guys. Okay, so I don't quite know why it was doing that, but what I did is I just changed it to set is loading. So is loading is changed once this function is called, because this function is going to be called once the component mounts anyways. So, and I'm actually going to clean up this useEffect. I'm sure if I read into that more, I'd understand it, but I didn't even read into that. So, but anyways, so basically what happens is the component will mount. It will call this function, anonymous arrow function, which will call the dad joke function, which will then fetch the request. If the request comes back, it will set app state is loading to false, and it will set the joke to dad joke. So now if we go ahead and save that, you see once our component mounts, we should automatically have a dad joke populated. So that way we're not having to click not funny, but then if we do click not funny, we should fetch a brand new dad joke that is funny. So that's basically our application. Our application is basically done now. We do want to implement this is loading because, as you see, for a second there's no joke. Our function or our component mounts, but there's no joke for like a split second. We don't want that. So what we'll do is right below this, where we actually grab is loading, we'll go if is loading, return. We'll do an H2 element that just says, if I can, an H2 element that just says loading. That way for a split second we will get loading, and then once it's all loaded, the entire component, and we have a joke, we render it. So that's basically our app, guys. If you guys just wanted to see how it functions, how it works, you guys can stop the video now. I'm just going to do a little bit of CSS styling to make everything look pretty, or I guess it would be Sass styling. So we'll start off with a wildcard, and our wildcard we'll do margin 0, padding 0, box sizing, border box. And then we want our HTML element and our body element. We want this to have a width of 100% and a height of 100%. And we'll give it a background color of 1E, 1E, 1E. Ah, what the hell just happened? Okay. Awesome. Now that's obviously hard to read, so we will give everything the color of white. Okay, a little bit better. The button's really hard to read, but we'll fix that later. So let's go ahead and go back to our app.js and see what our structure is. So we have a div. Let's also close that. Let's also give this display flex. It's probably going to stack everything left, right? Nope. Okay, cool. Did not. We will justify content center and align items center. That way everything is placed perfectly in the center of the screen. Awesome. We will then target the div. This will have a display flex. That is going to push everything next to each other. So what we want to do is we want to go flex direction column. So that way they stack nicely on top of each other. We want what's next? Sorry. Let's go ahead and let's go to Google Fonts, because I absolutely hate these fonts. So we'll go fonts.google.com. We want Lato. Go to Lato, and we'll just grab the classic Open Sans. And we will just grab the import statement here at import URL, and we will stick that above our wildcard. Almost commented everything out. And backspace our wildcard here. So now we have some nice fonts. We want our H2 tag, which is our title tag. We want it to have a font family of Open Sans. Awesome. We also want to center these items here in our div. So we want justify content center. I believe since we flipped everything. Oh, nope. Okay, so it would be a line item center. It would normally be Justify Content Center, but since we changed the flex direction, it's Align Items. Align Items Center. Awesome. We want this H2 to have a little bit of margin. We'll do 20 pixels because 20 pixels is just so perfect. And we also, now we can, so awesome. So now we have Open Sans, we have our button, which we need to style, and we have our dad joke. So let's go ahead and target the H1 element here. We also want to give it some margin. Since the margin is going to collapse, we'll do 20 auto. As you see, the bottom margin, oh no, the margin didn't collapse, did it? So what we'll do is we'll just do margin bottom. So we'll do 0 auto 20, 0 auto 20, and then we'll just put 20 pixels of margin in between the button. And we want the font family to be Lato. Give it a little bit of separation. Awesome. And then we can go ahead and style our button last. So the button, we will do a background of transparent. Transparent. Okay, transparent. Awesome. We will give it some padding. We want 5 pixels top and bottom, and we'll do 10 pixels left and right. Awesome. We also want to change, well actually, let's do 20 pixels left and right, make it a little bit longer. Perfect. We also want to change the border. So border 2 pixels solid white, and we want the font family to be Open Sans, and we want the font weight to be bolder. Awesome. As you see, when we hover over it, our cursor doesn't change, so it doesn't look clickable. So let's change our cursor to pointer, and that was correct, cursor pointer. And we will also change our, so let's go ahead and change our cursor. So we'll set cursor to pointer, COURSER, cursor pointer, and we will also change the, what else? Our outline. So we don't want it to actually have an outline. This is not accessible, so I don't recommend you actually set your outline to none. But, oh, sorry, I almost opened a Piper. But just for this tutorial, we'll set it to none. So as you see now, we get a dad joke, but some of these long jokes are very, very long, and they take up almost an entirety of the screen, and some of them actually do take up the entire screen, and they'll break, or they'll break lines at the very edge of the screen, and we don't want that. So let's go ahead and just give our H1 element a little bit of padding. So we don't need padding top and bottom, but we will do 20 pixels, and we can actually assign this a max width. So let's say we don't want the width to be any more than 960 pixels, just for safe measure. So there we go, guys. That is basically our dad joke app, all ready to go. So if we refresh, we hit the API, we set our state, and we get a nice little dad joke. And if it's not funny, which is, dad jokes are always funny, so no one would ever hit this button. But if they feel so inclined to hit the button, they'll definitely get a funny dad joke. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to leave a like, don't forget to subscribe, and hit that bell icon. A link to the GitHub repo will be in the description below, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Later, guys.